What up? What up? Y'all good? Everybody good? Yeah? For real, we won that 3-on-3 tournament. That was pretty cool. Where's Duran? Is Duran in here? Some people from my team, yo. My dude. You got to get a 6'8" black guy on your team in order to win games. I'll tell you that much. I'm just really excited because I felt like on Friday was a demonstration of us as a community, right? Us as a body of believers demonstrating what it looks like to love a city, right? And we could say all day long that we love the city, but it's one thing to say it, and it's a whole other thing to demonstrate it, right? And so I was actually having a conversation while we were there with one of the directors of Beverly Bootstraps. Anybody know Beverly Bootstraps? Heard of it before? Okay. So she came up to me. She was like, man, this is awesome. This is really incredible. And her words were, I've never seen a church actually care. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. You know, that I've never seen a church actually in the community putting their money where their mouth is. I don't know if you know this or not, but it cost us about between $8,000 to $10,000 to put something like this together. And to just bless our city, man, how cool is that? I don't know about you, but I mean, that's why I exist here, is to be a part of a church body that actually gives a rip, right? And I think that that's pretty neat. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and open up. We're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4 and 5. We're going to kind of close out chapter 4 and look in the beginning of chapter 5. Topic of discussion today is this idea of love, the weightiness of love. I feel like in our culture, we really struggle with understanding what it looks like to truly love, right? What is love? What is it? It's kind of just a term that we use. And so to give you some context of where we're going, I'll tell you a little bit about our family. So you guys know this already about me, but if you're a first-time guest, you don't know this, but you'll figure it out pretty quick. I'm a clown, not like a literal clown, but I'm just kind of like, you know, just unintentionally witty. I don't even mean to be that way. I'm just like, I'm cracking jokes all the time. It's really even hard for me to take me serious. Like, even when I'm having myself a serious moment, I'll make myself laugh. Like, I'll yell at my kids, like, what are you doing? You know, it's like I'm just stupid like that. So because of the gift of sarcasm that God has obviously given me, tied that with the gift of exaggeration, right? Because I don't know if you know this or not, but we had 1,000 people there on Friday for that, and there's about 800 of you here today. And so, no, just kidding. But because of those things, when Beth and I were dating in college, we started a date. I was 18 years old. I was 17 when we met. I think I was 18. No, I was 17 when we started to date, actually. So, I mean, I was this young whippersnapper, right? I mean, it's just I was a little different, but I mean, that stupid, clowny side of me was always there. Always had too much to say, and it was never really the right thing to say. But anyway, because of this, Beth really struggled in the beginning of our dating years to really figure out if I'm ever serious. Like, how do I know if this cat is being for real or if he's joking? Because I would say just some dumb things, and she just could never tell, like, okay, did his mom really die? Like, are you serious? You know, like, we could just never figure out whether or not I was being serious. So she came up with, actually, we were sitting down, we had dinner with a couple of friends. They were like, yo, y'all need a word. Like, a word that means like I'm telling you the freaking truth. Right? You need a word that's going to describe this. And so I don't even know how it got brought up, right? I don't even know. Do you remember this? But somehow the word pillow became like the I swear to God I'm telling the truth type word for us, right? So we just came up with this word, and the word was pillow. It makes no sense at all. It just means that it's a random word for me to tell you that's for real. That ain't a joke. We're just dumb. Our whole family is so dumb. It's embarrassing. And so the way it would be used, it'd be like I call her on the phone, yo, boo, I broke my finger. Pillow? Pillow. Oh my gosh, well, we need to get you to the hospital. Or like, honey, I'll be back. I'll be at home at around like 8 tonight. She's like, pillow? I'm like, well, more like, 8:30, And so pillow kind of just become this natural word for our family. And so anyway, tie this into really as Beth and I began to date, one of the primary reasons we wanted to do something like this is because my mother's a super affectionate woman. If you met her, you would know this. She's just super affectionate. And it wasn't a random thing for my mom to tell me she loved me. Yeah, we had dysfunction growing up, but my mom would tell me often, like, I love you. I love you. Every time I would go to sleep, love you, babe. Every time we're on the phone, love you, babe. That's my mom. She's like super affectionate, right? And so therefore, in my home growing up, the word I love you it was just a natural commonality or a natural common word of our vocabulary. And so the problem is, then check this though, the problem is when I love you, that word I love you is a part of your vocabulary, and then you enter into the dating scene. Like, follow me on this. You can't just drop that line, right? Am I wrong? Anybody else ever feel that? Like when you're in the dating scene and you're kind of like just dating and you're on the phone, you're like, hey, yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you. Bye. Do you really? Like, it's like that super awkward thing. So I remember actually being on the phone with Beth and having the slip up. The slip up's always awkward where it's like, hey, it's good. Yeah, it's fun. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you. And she was like, well, pillow? She said, pillow? And I was like, then you're stuck, right? It's like, I gotta go, and you're done. And so I just remember having the slip up, and it was a really awkward moment. A few weeks later, though, we did. I mean, it was kind of cute. I still remember we were in our dorm room. Remember first time I told you I love you? You probably don't even remember this. Come on, girl. It's messed up. It's a big moment for me, Like, I remember the day. I remember you were on my lap. We were sitting there in front of a computer. Remember when the computers were this big? We were sitting in front of one of those things. And we were having a moment. I told her I loved you, and she kind of looked up with her eyes. She was like, pillow? And I was like, pillow? I love you. And it was just a real cute moment. So, all that being said, pillow, even, this is a side note, pillow is like still in our family. Like our kids have picked up on this word. Actually, I'm not going to lie, we've passed this along to some of you in the church. Some of you in the church, I'll be hanging with your kids. I'll be like, hey, we're going to go to the park. And a random kid will be like, pillow? I'm like, what? Who are you? And kids are cruel. So my kids are cruel. If you have kids, you know it. And if you don't have kids, you're like, why is he so mean? Shut up. Okay. So my kids have put a silent F on the end of pillow so they can lie about it. I'm not even kidding you. So like we'll say something and I'll be like saying to my kids, pillow, and they'll be like, pillow. And I'm like, you're lying. They're like, yeah, but it was a silent F. You didn't hear it. Do you see how wicked the human heart is? It's crazy. So, anyway, all that being said, here's what's interesting to me. Here's what's interesting about this word love. In some contexts, some of the most powerful words that can be spoken to someone is the words, I love you. I love you. There's some of us in here that there's a family member that we are just waiting to hear those words from. Just waiting to hear those words. But the thing about this word love is that it's such kind of like a cultural word. It's in our culture, it's like way too broad, right? Isn't it? It's just this massively broad word. And because it's such a massively broad word, it doesn't really carry as much weight as the scriptures would call us to have it carry. Like, I mean, it's crazy to me, right? We love restaurants. We love our sports teams. They're Red Sox fans. Y'all freaking love your teams, right? We love TV shows. I love that show. But then it's like, and I love my family. Well, whoa, it's like, how do you even do that? And well, I love tacos. Easy. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of love there. And I love my new kicks, and I love my children. Well, what do you love more? Like, how do you actually define? Like, what does this mean, this idea of love? So when we read this idea of love in the Bible, to us, it's kind of confusing if we're honest. Love one another. Like, what does that even mean? What does it even mean? What we've attempted to do in our culture is we'll like label love by the word more. Because you can't rank it with a number, right? That'd be really weird. I love you. Well, how much? 74. And so what we're doing, I love you more than this, or I love you too. No, I love you more. No, I love you more. No, we love each other more. Who loves each other more? Anybody ever done that before? Because it's so confusing. It's so confusing. And so because of this, the biblical heaviness of the meaning of love is almost completely diminished. So the big question we're trying to answer here as we look at Ephesians end of chapter 4 and the beginning of chapter 5 is this. So when I say, or when you say, or when we say, I love something, what does that mean biblically? So when I'm told by someone, I love you, or when I tell somebody, oh, I'm a loving person, what does that actually mean? Or better yet, when Jesus gives us the command, right? Because it's a command. He commands us to love, right? He says very clearly, a new commandment I'm giving to you, that you would love one another. So if this idea of love, it's a command, right? Anybody ever been commanded to feel something? Like I command you now, get scared. You're like, but you said it that way, I am, But if I'm like, get scared, you're like, I don't feel that way at all. So to have a command be tied to an emotion is really difficult to understand. So when Jesus says to love one another, what in God's name is he speaking of? So we'll find that out in Ephesians. Before I get to this, just to give you a little bit of context. So Paul, the Apostle Paul, is writing this. He's in a Roman prison. We don't know if he's under house arrest or in an actual prison cell. There's a little confusion about what's going on there. But he's in prison because his Christian beliefs. That's it. He was there in prison. Imagine that. You've got some sort of belief, and so they lock you up, right? And so this is what's going on for Paul. Most likely, he's not been in prison for very long. He's only been there probably a few weeks or a few months, so he hasn't been there for a massively extended period of time. But still, for Paul, this is kind of new territory. This is a little bit confusing. This is kind of in the beginning of his ministry. He hasn't been imprisoned so many different times and shipwrecked and all these different things that he had to endure over the course of his time. Chances are he's chained right now to a Roman soldier. Just imagine this, right? So you're locked up. There's been so many stories about you and about your faith and about this movement of Christianity that they'd lock you up next to a soldier, because in a lot of other cases, what would happen was, if you remember in the book of Acts, an earthquake would go off and all of a sudden all God's people would come out. So they lock him up, most likely shackled to a Roman soldier. He's got to be scared. He's got to be frustrated. I'd be ticked off and angry. He's aggravated, obviously, right? I don't know about you, but if I'm locked up to a Roman soldier in a first century jail, I'm not having a good week, right? If that's me, I'm begging God. I'm like, yo, Lord, just kill everyone. Is he really your pastor? That's what some of you guys are. Is he really? Is he upset? Is he always like this? I don't know. Honestly, if that's you, right? Be honest. If that's you, you're bitter, you're angry, you have a hard heart towards anybody, talking silently under your breath. And hey, what you doing today? Shut up, man. You stupid. Is that just me? No, that's not. Okay, maybe it's just me. And then here, though, Paul, as he's writing a letter to a church in which he helped establish, under very, very dark circumstances, begins to outline what love is. What love is. He's not writing a letter to try to, hey, yo, get me out. If you love me, you're going to break in here Marine style and get me out, right? That's not what he's saying. And so we'll start in Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 31 to give us a context for our primary text, which will be chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. So look at this with me. It should be on the screen. It was read earlier, but I'll read it again. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. And I love this passive turn, to have it be put away from you. It's this idea of like, you can't kind of get rid of that. Anybody been super angry before and kind of just be like, and just try to get rid of it? No. That takes time. He's saying, listen, you can't just get rid of this. This needs to be passively taken from you. Allow this thing here, these emotions, these responses to people, allow this bitterness, this malice, this anger to be taken from you. Be kind to one another. Right there, I'm just like, dang, all right. Tender-hearted. That's hard, right? Dudes are like, well, I ain't tender. Tender-hearted. What if your boys were like, oh, you're so tender? I'd be pissed, right? Oh man, look at the way he hoops. He's so tender. Like, you better get off me, right? Not tender. Back away. Forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. And here we go. We're going to start in chapter 5 now. Therefore, in other words, what he's saying, okay, here's some things that are bitterness, wrath, clamor, slander, all of this stuff be put away from you. Okay, therefore, or in essence, or basically what he's saying is, I'm telling you these things here, put these things away so you could be imitators of God. Because bitterness and clamor, which I honestly couldn't define clamor. I should have looked it up. Like, what's clamor? Can someone tell me? No. I love it. Let it be put away. Be imitators of God. Follow his example. Model Jesus as beloved children. Like a child motivated by a recognition that they're deeply loved. As beloved children of God, right? So we're motivated by the love of God because we are his beloved children. It says, and walk in love. Walk in love. So walk in love is like conduct yourself in love. Okay, but that's a pretty broad word, right? What does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? Walk in love. Is this a romantic comedy? Like, and walk? Like, some of this, what do you mean? And walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So in a society that uses this idea of love, or this word of love, as kind of a junk drawer term, it's got too broad of a meaning. Paul is saying, okay, I want to bring some clarity around this for all of us. I want us to have a better understanding of what it means to love. So when you say, I love you, you actually know what you're talking about. And so when you say love, those around you might actually understand what in the world you're talking about. And he begins to bring some heaviness to this thing, right? It's not a lighthearted topic of discussion when you start looking at this. It's not some fluffy emotion or some random warm and fuzzy feeling. It's not this kind of Disney fairy tale, right? Isn't it like Jerry Maguire? You had me at hello. No, it's... If he's explaining what it is here, it's pretty dang weighty. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty unconventional in thinking. I'm doing a wedding today. Literally, like when I'm gone here, I have to run to a wedding. Not run, I'll drive, but whatever, because that'd be weird and I'd be sweaty. They don't want that. All right. And honestly, there's a couple here I'm going to marry shortly. Actually, there's another couple here that I'm marrying like a bunch of people here in the next couple months. It's great. Before I marry a couple, I usually will sit them down and we'll have usually about 6 premarital discussions, and we'll talk. We'll talk about some weighty things, right? The first session usually revolves around a little bit of background. What's your family life like? How were you raised? What were your parents like? How did they fight? How did they argue? What's your relationship with them? How close are you to them? We begin to ask some things, and usually I'll then figure out a little bit about how they've met and kind of what their current relationship looks like, and what do you fight about? What do you argue about? And you begin a dialogue with these couple, and kind of right before the session ends, And if I've done premarital counseling with you, you know this, right? Right before kind of that primary main session ends, I kind of put the Matt serious face on, which is hard for me, but I do my best, okay? I'm like, trying to get like my lips start shaking because I want to laugh. So I get all serious. I look them right in the eye. And I say something along the lines of something like this. Look at me for a second. Look at me. Right? It's funny. You know how hard this is to do? You don't want my job. It's difficult. Look at me. Shut up. You're making me laugh. Stop it. Stop it. Stop. Dustin, it was fine, right? When I did it in person, it was fine. There are 7 billion people in the world. 7 billion people in the world. Surely, you could find someone else. Pause. Who you're more compatible with. Surely, 7 billion people. I mean, and at this point, right, in the thing, it's at the end, right? So we've already talked about, like, she annoys the mess out of you. Like, you just told me this. He has massive family baggage. Did you hear what he was saying? Surely you can find someone who you're more compatible with, right? I mean, you annoy each other. You fight. You don't even fight well. You hurt each other on purpose. What in the world do you love about this person? You explain to me, you tell me, if I'm going to be the one marrying you, I got to know, okay? What do you love about this person so much that you're willing to get rid of the 6.999999999 billion other people, whatever, that was bad math, it wouldn't be 6 point, it'd be comma, but whatever. That you're willing to put all them to the side to say, I love this person. What does that even mean to you? And normally, now, not all the time, but normally you usually get a real awesome fairy tale story. I mean, it's just dope. It's like it should be on a Hallmark card. I should literally begin to take these things down and start sending this stuff into Hallmark and make millions. Because it's things like, or it's at least something that's been read. They complete me. And I'll just look at them. Nope. Lying. You're lying. You're lying. You are incomplete. That's an incomplete answer. That's not right. Oh, and they bring out the best in who I am. I'm like, hold up. Do you want me to rewind all the other things we just talked about? Because that is not true. You are lying. You're lying. Actually, 7 minutes ago, you said, they bring out the worst in you. A lot. More so than anyone. They make me happy. Why are you crying? I don't get it. I can't imagine life without them. And I'm like, we'll talk at 6 months. We'll talk at 6 months, right? Because everyone's been there where it's like, it's not just imagining, right? If you're married, you've been there. I know Beth has been there. It's not imagining. It's straight up dreaming. It's like, if only, what would life be like without, Matt? I mean, it's so honestly, I said, listen, that's great. Okay, so let's actually talk about what love then is. Because if that's love, if that's love, then that's not biblical love. And that seems a little bit more like transactional love, because that was a lot about you. and about what they have to offer you, right? And it's all about how it's motivated by what you're going to get. I'm going to get complete. I'm going to get the best brought out of me. I'm going to get happy. I'm going to have a life that is so great that I literally can't even imagine life without this person. And when I read Ephesians 5, I don't see it. I don't see it. When I read the Bible, I just don't see it. And when I talk to you, I don't see it. I mean, it's not true. It's a lie. And so let's look at it, right? The very first thing that is just pops out about this idea of love is to understand love is it's not earned. Love is not earned. It is something that is freely offered. There is no conditions attached to this thing. None whatsoever. It says in verse 1, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children. As beloved children. I don't know if you have kids. I got kids. My kids don't earn anything. I mean, if you got a kid, when was the last time they brought something to the table, right? When was the last time you walked in the house and were like, oh my gosh, we would not have this without you, right? Has that ever happened? It's never happened. Your kids, if you have kids, they don't earn jack. Maybe when they get older, they get a little job or something like that. They don't earn anything. As a matter of fact, anytime my kid wants to earn anything in my house, they come to me to try to earn it from. So, like, they can't even earn it on by themselves. So my daughter recently wanted a fish. So she's like, can I get $20 to get a fish? I'm like, no, I don't have $20 to give you for a fish. Well, can I do chores and earn it? It doesn't change the fact I ain't got $20 for a fish. You can still do chores. As a matter of fact, for the fact you asked me that question, get up to your room and clean it, right? It's like, it's like you can't even earn, as a kid, you can't even earn something because it's got to kind of be given to you anyway because they could have done it better than you could have done it anyway. Does that make sense? Like, okay, if you want me to give you $5 for cleaning this house, I'll give you $5 for cleaning this house, but it's not because you earned that $5. I could have done a much better job in a much shorter time without the hassle and kept my dang money without you. What is wrong with me? Where am I? And in the same way, now check it. I try to bring it back. In the same way, when we read this, when we read the text that we are loved, and the way that we love is as a beloved child, basically what it's saying is in the same way that God loves us because He is our Heavenly Father. Do you know that you have anything that you have solely because He has allowed you to have it? I don't care what you believe. I don't even care if you believe in God or don't believe in God. What you have has been granted to you, and you had nothing to do with it. You were born where you were born. You didn't make that decision. You were born into the family you were born into. You didn't make that decision. You are surrounded by the friends and the people that you're surrounded by. You didn't make that decision. You are good and have certain bents towards certain giftings that you had nothing to do with. You might have cultivated some of it. You might have helped refine some of it. But come on, you could have been born with no ears. God gave you ears. Aren't you happy? I mean, like everything that has been given to us, or everything that we obtain or that we have has been given to us, whether you believe in God or not, somewhere it came. It had nothing to do with you. And God has loved us like a heavenly father, like a dad ought to love his kids, not because we're honorable students, not because we're honorable children. He loves us because it's in his nature and character. Think about that. That loving someone is based upon who you are, no longer who they are. This is what this is saying. To love somebody has everything to do with what's in you and nothing to do with what's in them. Like you are commanded to love your enemy, which means you are commanded to love people who are absolutely unlovable. They've done nothing to deserve it. Now, it's cute having that kind of conversation with married couples and premarital counseling and all those things that, you're called to love this person and love them based upon who you are and not based upon what they have to offer you. But I'm talking about, what do you mean love my enemy? My enemy? What does that even look like? What does it look like? So Ephesians 5 says this, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in love. Like to walk in love it's not an emotion, it's a conduct. Love, it's not this idea, it's a decision to act a certain way. Love isn't a desire, it's not a passion, it's not a feeling, it's an action. It's an action where love is a verb. I remember when, right after Beth and I got married, the day after we got married, we went over to the deli to get some egg sandwiches because that's how we do in Jersey. We get egg sandwiches with, do y'all do that on a hoagie roll? Y'all don't do that out here. I can't find a spot that really does it well. So anyway, but we went and got some egg sandwiches. Remember this? And somebody in there who either knew that we got married or was at the wedding, I don't even know. I didn't know who they were. There was a lot of people that were there. I was like, I don't know any of you. But I got wifed up, yo. So somebody sits down and talks to us as we're ordering, and they said, listen, for the rest of your marriage, you're going to have to choose to love. I was like, what do you mean choose to love? Look at this girl, yo. I don't need to choose nothing. Bam! I'm going to love. It's just, I love. That's because, look at. She said, no. For the rest of your life, you will have to choose. You will have to decide. You have to make decisions to love. Because it's not a feeling. It's not. It's an action. So, if love is an action, what does it look like? That's the big question that we got to ask, right? That's what I want to know. What does it actually look like to love? Because it's one thing to acknowledge the fact, okay, love isn't a feeling. Love, obviously, like we can't get to the place where we solely believe. Now, I'm not saying that you don't get warm and fuzzies. I'm not saying that you don't feel anything and that you're emotionless. But what I'm saying is the primary term or the primary definition for love isn't tied to your feelings because you're still called to love when you don't feel like it. And so what does it look like to love? Ephesians 2, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and a sacrifice. So according to this text, in your marriage, at your job, with your enemies, in dealing with your children, in dealing with your parents, in dealing with your in-laws. According to this text, love is conducting yourself in such a way that sacrificially offers up your wants, your desires, your preferences for theirs. Every time. There's no exception. So to say I love you and to make this relationship about me is an oxymoron. To say I love you because you provide a certain way for me is an oxymoron. Because love isn't tied to what comes your way. Love is based upon who you are and what he's done, not what they've done. 1 John 3:16 says it like this, by this we know what love is, that Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and our sisters. So here's what this means. Unless your definition of love consists of some sort of sacrificial action for the benefit of others, you are not loving well. Just think about this though for a second. What if our world consisted of this type of love? Now, I'm not trying to get all Unitarian on everyone and just say, hey, we just got to love everybody. And we ought to love everybody, but we ought to know what it means to actually love everybody. We need to have some clarity around what this word and this term actually means. Like, what does it look like for you if every time you said, I love you, or you received love from somebody, it came in the terms of deep down there was a recognition of someone's self-denial in the process? I mean, like, think about this. What would your dating relationship look like if you loved like that? And you laid aside your needs, your desires, your wants. Now, what's interesting about this is we're so blind to ourselves, and so we'll sit next to somebody that we're close to, and we'll start nudging them. You listening? You listening? You hearing that? Which demonstrates you don't know how to love them. Because once again, you think love is about you. See how blind we get? I mean, what would your dating relationship look like? What would your marriage look like if this is how you loved one another? What would your parenting look like to your kids if it looked like laying aside your desires, your wants? And you know what that means? That doesn't mean always giving a kid what they want. Can I tell you some of the hardest things I have to do is to stand firm with my children? You know what kind of tantrum you get out of that? Yo, I got a 5-year-old. Oh my gosh. So I asked Beth the other day, I was like, yo, what if an adult acted like that? Could you imagine? Could you imagine? What's for dinner? Spaghetti. I don't want it. What? You're not eating ever. Go to your room now. And just could you imagine first off being told that? And could you imagine stomping it's just crazy to me. And so sometimes it would have been a lot easier to just say, we're having spaghetti. Oh, you didn't want spaghetti? Here, we'll give you a hot dog. As you could tell, we're not very organic in our eating, but whatever. No, that's not going to work. Here's some candy. Just shut up, okay? Look, a parent, don't lie. You have bribed your children with candy before. Amen. What would we do without candy and television? Oh, okay. It's another sermon. We'll get to that. But sometimes it would be so much easier to just put my desire out there and say, you know what I really want right now? I really want peace. And so in order to love myself well, you get candy and some TV time. Go watch Shark Week. It's great. And then we'll go swimming in the ocean. It's like, But no, to love my children is to actually know what's best for them, and at times to stick my foot into the ground and say, I'm not moving. I'm dad. I love you. Because I have to have 20/20 vision, right? I got to think 20 years down the road. This might look cute or a little annoying at 5, but you start bringing this thing into the dorm room or the boardroom. I wasn't very loving for letting you act that way, right? Yes. Some of you are like, is he saying I could beat my children? No. I'm not saying that. What would your friendships look like if your friendships weren't so conditional? What would your friendships look like if you actually weren't so concerned about what time you have to go to bed at night? And their potential needs that might last till 2 a.m. in the morning. We've had friends like that. That's love. What does it look like to be a friend that doesn't always just agree and side with one another, but rather is willing to speak truth and say, you know what, you're wrong here. And that was hard for me to say. It would have been a lot easier for me to just side with you, but you're wrong here. What does it look like to have friendships like that? What does it look like to love not based upon what makes you feel good? But yet that's how we're called to love. All right, I'm going to close with this. There's a great danger in this text. And when I read this, I look at it and it at times will terrify me. If we're not careful, we'll begin to read this and not add the last 2 words in verse 2. And I'll read it to you. It says this, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. Now here's the great danger. Check this. The great danger in loving this way, laying down your wants, your desires, your preferences for the benefit of someone else's, the great danger in loving like this is that you do it out of a love for that person and rather than for a love for God. And then when we live a life of love that winds up terminating on another person, what happens then is that we begin to keep score. I'm up 2-0. I'm up 2-0 because I did that for you, and I'm 2 in a row. And you begin to keep score with one another. And it begins to be this compromise of this give and take of love, or begins to be this bitterness that grows up because maybe you legitimately do a better job of loving sacrificially towards someone else. And so the danger is, though, we begin to do this for that other person and we do not do it as a reflection to God. And the way that we know whether or not we've done this at a reflection to God is whether or not we're keeping score and how we feel inside towards this person. It's one thing to love someone else. It's a different thing to love somebody else, not based upon them, but based upon your love for God. That changes the whole dynamic. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Keeping score? I mean, this is the American way. We do everything hoping that there's a benefit in return for us. And if it's not immediate, if I do that loving thing towards you again, I'm hoping it definitely comes that time. And if not, either I'm not going to keep loving you or I'm going to harbor bitterness deep down inside. And over the course of our time, as I continue to love you, and then even when you love me back, I won't even begin to recognize it because I'll be so angry and bitter towards the fact that you've not loved me well because I've tried my hardest towards you. This is where marriages go wrong. This is where friendships go wrong. This is where parental relationships go wrong. Is when we outpour and we do it for the other person, but we don't receive something in the end. That doesn't eliminate your call to continue to love, to lay down your desires, to lay down your needs. Listen to me. I think it's in Hebrews chapter 12 where the Bible tells us, okay, all right, granted, you've done some of these things well, and it's painful. You're not getting in response what you want. And the writer of Hebrews says, but let's have perspective. You haven't shed any blood. You're not bleeding. It don't feel good. And this is saying we look to Jesus. Like, hear me very clearly. Let me explain Christianity as I close. I think that just the typical evangelical view of how people perceive what Christianity is just so, I can't say that word. Filter. Yo, you should be so proud of me. The filter just caught it. It was like, didn't come out. It's like I'm growing up. It's just dumb. See, we live in a culture that thinks that Christianity is about rules, morals, traditions. Do this, follow the rules. Do this, be good. Do this, show up to church. Can I just tell you that has nothing to do with Christianity at all? Christianity is a demonstration of the fact that God loved. As a matter of fact, 1 John says, God is love. And so look, you can rack up as many points as you think that you can rack up. You come to church every Sunday. You could, sing all the right songs. You could have all the right music in your car. You could read your Bible religiously. You could do all the right things. You could be literally the nicest person I've ever met. That has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. The difference between Christianity and every other religion out there is that every religion says, do this to appease him. And Christianity says, I've done this, I've appeased myself for you. I've sent my son to pay for sin. And look, I love this. I don't have to convince you you're not great. I don't. I mean, you might be better than your neighbor, Tom. But come on, bro. Like, you're not that great. And so to convince somebody that I'm wicked, and the vast majority, even listen to this, the vast majority of even my good deeds, now this is hard to swallow. I'm saying this about me, so you might disagree. But the vast majority of my good deeds are somehow tied to my own personal satisfaction. So in my marriage, the vast majority of the time I do something that I believe is loving, and I'm attempting to do this out of a pure heart. There's definitely secondary motives. I'm hoping to get something out of it. And what God did is he said, the heart is wicked. I'm sending Jesus. He is my fragrant offering. He'll live perfect. Could you imagine perfect? He'll live perfect. He'll be tempted in every way that we're tempted. He'll be tried in every way that we're tried. He'll be tested in every way that we're tested. And in every moment, in every instance, he'll do nothing except what the Father tells him to do. And he'll do it under the empowerment of the Holy Spirit. And then he'll die. He'll die because he's perfect. He'll die because he says he and the Father are one. He wasn't murdered. He laid his life down. It says he gave himself up. Jesus himself says, nobody takes my life from me. I lay it down on my own accord. He had nails driven through his hands, nails driven through his feet. You love? You love? You haven't shed blood not once. He says, Christianity, this is what Christianity is. Let me just be very clear. You trust in that. You believe that you don't have to spend the rest of your life trying to appease an angry God who's going to zap you if you do the wrong thing. Or even better yet, that you have to try to pay off by doing all the right deeds. Like, I have these conversations with people all the time. Oh, I'm a good person. Whoa, for real? For real? Dang, because I'm not. I know me. And how do you know? How do you weigh this thing? What if you're like 51, 49? That's a rough day. You're going to get up there. I thought, do you not measure on a curve? Like, what? How does this? He's like, no, listen. For God so loved the world, that he gave his only son. And whoever believes in him should not perish. They will not perish. They'll have everlasting life. And that's not just eternity. That's a joy in life now. That means that you don't have to live the rest of your life trying to appease a holy God, because in the end, you're like a little kid trying to appease their parent. You can't do it. Can't do it. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, or 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says this: God made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf, so that we then, as we trust in him, might become the righteousness of God. Trust in Jesus, your life will be forever changed and free. Free, no longer having to carry the weight of loving perfectly.